Nick, what if I told you that the moon is not what we think it is?
I would believe you.
Ancient civilizations spoke of a time before it existed, and NASA's own scientists admit it might be hollow, and some believe it was placed there deliberately. Could it be an alien observation post? Today we dive into it on MKUSUal.
It's like MK Ultra, but more normal. We're going to the moon.
We're going to the moon.
No cheese allegations in your research?
There's plenty of cheese allegations. We should do a whole show on if the moon is cheese.
No one can tell me it's not until I go there and try it for myself.
Dude, if the moon really was made of cheese, I would sign up with, you know how much I love cheese.
Dude,
I went to the store last night.
I would never see you again.
I went to the store last night at 10 o'clock just to get a block of cheese. I just came home with it in my pocket. Well, Nick, it turns out that the moon is too perfect.
I've heard this.
Scientists have long pointed out that the moon's almost mathematically impossible. It's the only natural satellite in the solar system that perfectly stabilizes its host planet's axial tilt, preventing extreme weather shifts that could wipe out life. And without it, the Earth would wobble violently, causing chaotic climate shifts. Isaac Asimov once wrote in his New Guide to Science that, quote, "We cannot help but come to the conclusion that the moon, by some freak of nature, is at just the right distance to perform its stabilization role. A coincidence, perhaps, but a suspicious one. And even more bizarre, this is the one that always got me. Russian astronomer Alexander Devyatkin says it's statistically improbable that the moon ended up in the perfect position by accident. And that's because the moon is exactly 1/400th the size of the sun and exactly 400 times closer to Earth than the sun, making our total solar eclipses possible. And there's no known natural process that would create such an alignment."
The perfect ratio is what you're saying for that.
Yes.
For that to occur. This is yes, that one's crazy. Because you should be able to, like any other planet that has a moon in our solar system has some type of eclipse. Like the moon will go in front of the sun, but not in totality.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't block out the sun. It doesn't create a, what's that called? The ring of light around the sun.
Oh, yeah. What is that called? I could Google it.
Yeah. You know what I mean, though. It's like that wouldn't happen anywhere else. Here's something that
doesn't happen.
Yeah, and if it does, we should be able to observe it, say, oh, this isn't a rare phenomenon, but it is because we can observe that.
It's called the solar corona.
Corona, okay.
Yeah, so it's both the exact right size and distance and positioned. Without the moon being that exact right size and position, Earth would be super chaotic and we wouldn't have eclipses. Which is very odd.
In a universe that is in a state of entropy, there is no stable. I mean, it's constantly expanding and blah, 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 blah. This made me think of something from the movie Goldfinger. A quote, Ian Fleming, famous, wrote all the James Bond books: once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action.
Ooh.
A single occurrence may be random, 2 might still be chance, but 3 times implies intent or a pattern, especially in espionage, strategy, or competitive environments.
Okay. I mean, what is the universe? What is, you mentioned entropy. What is the universe? What is survival? The chance that this would make us be so able to survive on this planet.
Right.
In every way. And then I've heard it said, because I've heard this theory before. I also read a couple Zachariah Sitchin's books.
Okay.
Have you ever looked into him? He's the Anunnaki guy.
Yeah.
I've heard it said that...
I know him because of Ron Paul. but I've never read any
That's
of the books.
amazing. You gotta wait. Hold on. What was the connection?
Well, he used to go on Alex Jones, Ron Paul would.
Okay,
But he would talk because he had like studied the.
he would talk about
Zechariah.
Zechariah. Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
He would
Ron Paul gets cooler every day.
Dude, a legend. I came for the audit the Fed, and I stayed for the Zechariah sitch.
That was kind of the story of the last couple weeks on our show. A lot of people came and subscribed because of the audit Fort Knox.
Okay.
And then they stayed for dinosaurs are real. And now they get this. But anyway, I heard it said that, you know, if you think about it, the stabilization for life on Earth, that's the big one. But the eclipse is almost weirder because it makes you look up.
Yes.
It's an event that all of ancient cultures base their, you know, their calendars around, and they considered it, you know, like an apocalypse, a new age every time it happened. It makes our culture take a minute, stop looking at the ground like a pig, look up to the sky, say, wow, what are the odds of that?
They stop watching their crops grow, or they stop observing the herd of animals they're following to eat.
Yeah, and you just, for a minute, you're like, what would life be like without a sun? And it makes you think about what's out there outside the Earth. It also makes you think about higher powers and super intelligence. It just changes your whole paradigm if you were a Ibu Gogo or a Denisovan to look up and see the sky is going haywire.
The sky is black. The thing that makes us warm and grows our food. Because it also like affects birds and like bugs and shit. It gets like eerily silent, which would be a very, that would be like a
it's the
terrifying.
It is like an apocalypse.
Yeah,
It's a miniature apocalypse.
Oh, everything is stopping. Like, oh, this is bad.
So it might be a little reminder that, like, hey, I'm keeping you alive and you are small. Whether you consider that from like a religious subtext or more of like a scientific, what's going on here subtext. Because the super intelligence could just be an alien race. I mean, if we are a big experiment, which we're gonna kind of get into in this episode,
or like an ancient human race that has survived by living underground.
I have wondered that.
Till they, you know, all these. We've talked about this.
What
recently.
if we built the moon?
I mean, well, let's get into the next thing because I think that kind of starts to.
Well, okay. Here's something you might not know. Some people think the moon is hollow.
I've heard this.
We'll add this as number 3 on the list of weird moon shit. This is NASA crashed a lunar module into the moon's surface in 1969. We shot the moon, baby, America. We did it. Did you when you were
It's
watching,
too round.
one of my favorite Mr. Show sketches? Did you ever watch the blow up the moon? Did you see that one?
I don't think so.
They have a whole. Okay, anyway.
The ones that stuck out from childhood were the horny, disgustingly perverted ones. Those stuck with me. So I should go back and rewatch it.
So in real life, we did shoot the moon in 1969, and we used seismic instruments. And we recorded a metallic reverberation that lasted for nearly an hour. Apollo 13's impact test in 1970 caused the moon to ring for over 3 hours, something unheard of for naturally formed celestial bodies. Dr. Gordon McDonald of NASA said, my fat ass called him Gordon McDonald's. Gordon McDonald of NASA said, it's more likely that the moon is hollow than that it has a uniform, solid core. Lunar rocks also contain an unusual amount of titanium, uranium-236, and neptunium-237, elements that don't appear naturally and suggest an artificial origin. Now, that's one I have never heard before. I know that there's a bunch of helium-3 up there, too, which is a fuel, and that has been theorized we might be able to use for fusion, which is a highly odd thing for this celestial little neighbor of ours to have. It's almost like it's some kind of, remember our pyramids episode and how we were talking about like different trees of technology?
Yes.
And how the Egyptians might have figured out a way to get free energy. Like, this to me says if the moon is made of advanced and rare materials and then it's filled with an advanced fuel source, then,
and it's not solid,
and we've never drilled it. We don't know what's inside there, and it's not completely solid. And even if it is solid or mostly solid, the guy from NASA said the other alternative is that it's completely uniform.
That's see what
Either one of those.
Either one of those is bizarre because what's the like mainstream theory of the if I remember correctly, the mainstream theory of the moon is that it's from impacts on Earth, like ejecta, that eventually forms into a sphere.
We'll get
because
into
of the
that,
gravity.
yeah.
Okay.
It's almost it's almost completely accepted. And again, I've read a lot of Sitchin, so my mind might be like deformed, but it's almost, I believe, completely accepted that it's at least part Earth.
Okay.
That something either hit Earth and then a combination of stuff on Earth and that body formed off. It might also just be part of the early formation of Earth. It might just be like truly a sister planet.
The uniformity shouldn't happen though.
Now that has nothing to do with that's just
The Earth isn't a perfect sphere.
It's more
And it's not perfectly solid. There are anyway.
So Russian scientists also said in 1970 the moon is not a completely natural formation. It's an artificial hollow body possibly left by an ancient extraterrestrial civilization.
See, if I would have known, I would have loved, I mean, I still can, I guess, get Duolingo and learn Russian, but they say a lot of crazy shit too in their documents, and I just have to take it at face value.
Well, we have our whole CIA Project Mockingbird thing happening over here, and the Russians are just out here. The Russians say crazy shit like oil and gas don't come from dinosaurs; they're just naturally produced by the Earth. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a whole other civilization.
It's a whole other
happening.
complete paradigm shift.
So it's in the exact right position. It's the exact right size, shape, distance, full of all these rare advanced minerals and gases. But let's talk about structures.
Oh.
NASA's own images and amateur astronomers have spotted anomalous structures across the lunar surface. There's the shard and the tower spotted on NASA's Apollo 10 photos. These structures rise several miles high, and the shard appears crystalline as if artificially built. There's the lunar domes and tracks. Structures resembling domes, possibly glass-like, have been reported by multiple missions. Some even appear to move. And then there's a cube and pyramid shape. China's Chang'e 2 probe captured images of a cube-like object on the far side of the moon, leading to theories of artificial origins. Ken Johnston, a former NASA photo analyst, claimed that NASA deliberately airbrushes out these structures before public release.
Have you ever heard of Crow 777?
No.
He's like an independent astronomer, but he's been filming the moon for a long time, like over a decade. And he has these videos of what looks like it's like on a TV when the little bar of glitch goes up and down, and it will just go while he's filming. It will just go over the moon, and it's not going outside the moon because the stars aren't obstructed. Oh. So it's just over the surface of the moon. This bar will come out and go down. And he's just some guy who's kind of, he's a kook, and he's got this.
Can you send that to me? Can you email
that
to me?
I will try to find a picture of it. This is just a.
Now there was a Rogan episode. I've been seeing it hit the clips, the old reels, where somebody was showing him how our modern phones, like the Androids and the Apples, when you look at the moon, it digitally alters it.
Oh, I've seen that.
It becomes super clear, and then it's essentially just a picture of the moon.
Right.
That is digitally created. That way your phone takes great pictures of the moon, when in reality your phone is just programmed that when it looks at the moon, it shows you an image that's not reality.
Okay, as a film photographer, I have tried to take pictures of the moon. I have a lens with a lot of zoom. I've stabilized on a tripod, done long exposure, It is very difficult to get a good picture of the moon on film,
Yeah.
which
doesn't make a lot of sense.
yeah.
So some people think the moon's dark side is a surveillance base. The moon is tidally locked, meaning one side never faces Earth. Weird point number 4. The entire human race has only seen one face of the moon naturally, and we don't even see that one naturally now with our the electronic control we're under. Former Air Force remote viewing specialist Ingo Swann, involved in CIA's Project Stargate, claimed he was tasked with physically spying on the far side of the moon. He saw large domed structures, humanoid figures, and machinery. China's Chang'e rover also saw gel-like substances and inexplicable heat signatures. That's the same rover we just talked about a minute ago. That's the thing, man. China and Russia, they got this stuff. I wish another country would just come out and just admit
Right.
stuff's going on. Dr. John Brandenburg, plasma physicist and former NASA consultant, said, quote, if we assume some advanced civilization wanted to mother Earth for thousands or millions of years without interfering, the moon would be the perfect base. Now, Buzz Aldrin.
Well, also,
Yeah.
famously, The Truman Show, the director observes...
Sat in the moon?
He sits in the moon.
Oh, the man in the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Predictive programming.
Yeah.
Now, during Apollo 11, 1969, our first trip to the moon, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong reported seeing UFOs shadowing their spacecraft for a significant portion of their trip. An official NASA transcript reads, Mission Control, do you have any idea where the SIVB rocket stage is? And Aldrin says, looking out here now, we have an object moving alongside of us. Years later, Aldrin admitted in a Reddit AMA, I almost said am I the asshole? Aldrin admitted in a Reddit Ask Me Anything that he did see a UFO, but was discouraged from talking about it. NASA has long lost or erased the original high-quality Apollo 11 moon landing tapes, and the official reason is accidental data recycling. Maurice Chatillon, a former NASA communications engineer, said all Apollo and Gemini flights were followed by spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin, sometimes at a very close distance. Is the moon a control system? This is there's a very famous, and I believe it's probably something like the MJ-12 documents. It's like half true, half fake. It's the alien interview transcripts where they say the moon is like a soul catcher.
Okay, yeah. Is that that gets kind of into what Zecharia Sitchin was saying, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Dr. Michael Persinger, neuroscientist, proposed that the moon's electromagnetic field interacts with the human brain, influencing thought patterns and even hallucinations. David Icke, or Ike, is of course famous for this as well. Some researchers argue the moon's phases correlate with spikes in war crime and mental illness, suggesting some kind of subtle psychological influence over human civilization. And of course, and people always say like, "Oh, everyone's acting weird. Is it a full moon?"
This is yeah. Well,
We've
that's
known
like
this forever.
I have a lot of friends who are nurses will confirm this, that they talk about it, they prepare for it, they follow, like, oh, Tuesday's a full moon, we're going to be busy. It is a phenomenon, whatever the origin of the phenomenon is. It's observed.
Even if it's not artificial, it's so insanely synced.
Yeah. Well, here's my theory. So it controls, the moon controls the tides.
Yeah.
The Earth is like 65, 70. It's like 2/3
Oh,
water. Yeah. And guess what? So are we. We are mostly water.
Ooh.
So there is like some electromagnetic thing happening to the water in us. It's like charging or decharging, throwing us off our homeostasis in some way. That's my theory. And that could be deliberate or just if I don't know, I personally don't believe it's all these coincidences are lining up perfectly for all this stuff to happen. It's hard. Like, I go back to that quote, the Goldfinger quote, because if you think logically about it, if this, then this, the odds get so crazy.
Yeah.
That, like, chaos produced these perfect conditions is very hard to believe. So
It is. Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my personal. It's my personal opinion.
Well, then it's like, well, why don't we ever see? We have some of the NASA stuff and some of the China stuff. Why don't we ever see the backside of the moon? You know, like,
Yeah.
the moon is so important. You think we'd talk about it more. We went up there a few times. We never went back.
We lost the technology to get back.
Isn't Northrop Grumman? What if the Apollo missions? This is going to go way out there. What if the Apollo missions? What if we really do have the technology to go to space, but then we just hopped in a UFO? It was like a little gift, kind of like they say, like microchips are a gift, or you know what I'm saying? Like, what if it was like a deal where we get to go, they get to take some of us to the moon, and then we just invent the fiction of, because a lot of people say the rockets were real, the trips were real, but the footage was fake. Mm-hmm. And what if, but then, you know, few things are more convincing to me than how convinced Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are, and a few of the other guys, that they went to the moon. They just don't talk about it a lot. Now, I understand this is like a whole other level of conspiracy, but what if they went up there, they're orbiting around Earth, and they just hopped the UFO, and that was the space program? Comment below. Is that the craziest moon theory you ever heard? And that might make sense. They might have had like code words and stuff they'd use with mission control.
Right.
Like, yeah, they're with us, or
We're having cheeseburgers for dinner again.
yeah. I am chugging coffee this episode. Well, I saved this for last. It's the idea of like, who did it, or is there an idea in the human mind of a world before the moon? There are historic accounts or tales of a pre-moon civilization. Ancient texts repeatedly describe a time before the moon existed. Greek historian Plutarch said the Arcadians were called Proselines, or the people before the moon. Roman poet Ovid, who wrote Metamorphosis, said there was a time when the Arcadians lived, of whom it is said they were older than the moon. Zulu shaman Credo Mutwas, an African oral history, describes the moon as a giant hollow egg placed in orbit by two brothers in reptilian form. Mayan and Sumerian, go ahead.
Well, that's the Anunnaki brothers.
Yeah.
That story.
Oh.
Like Enlil and Enki or whatever.
Yeah.
They were like, they disagreed philosophically about how we should be treated, and so...
That scares me. Mayan, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Mayan and Sumerian myths speak of an era when the sky looked different, implying the moon no longer exists, or did not exist at that time. There's also this whole electric universe thing, which is going to be a whole other show, that describes like a different theory of what gravity is and stuff, and that says the planets were just in completely different alignment, and the moon might just be a modern way to stabilize things and monitor us. The hollow egg thing freaks me out. This is perhaps one of the most frightening conspiracy theories to me, because if something really could prove it created the moon, you'd be inclined to believe anything else it said.
Right.
That's just such immense power.
Right, they could just back it up slightly, and then a tidal wave washes over the entire North American continent.
Or just leave.
Yeah.
Like the moon's going to leave in a week. Good luck. Go live underground.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with this final thought. Dr. Robert Jastrow, former chairman of NASA's Lunar Exploration Committee, said the moon is the Rosetta Stone of the planets. Its secrets, when revealed, will rewrite our history.
Ooh.
What do they know?
Well, that's certainly terrifying.
That's why we're trying to skip the moon and go to Mars.
Right. Yeah, Northrop Grumman,
Yep.
moon train.
Building the moon train.
Yeah, I don't know if I think the project is to just discern the viability, because $33 million doesn't seem like a lot of money to go take all that stuff and build it on the moon. But the stated purpose is for transportation of people and supplies, implying multiple locations that are occupied on the moon.
Yeah.
So why would you build the train between them if the first two things weren't there already?
Should someone even have a claim to stuff on the moon?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It made me think of two things. The treaty is supposedly that
Nobody can own the moon.
nobody can own it, but then people sell plots of land on the moon as a meme. So you can there's moon realtors.
They're
Moon land barons, or it's like
The
you pay
moon
$20
realtor.
and you get a little piece of paper that says I own this part of the moon or whatever. But
I just Googled this. King Frederick II of Prussia. There's a medieval claim that he had title to the moon.
dibs.
Somebody wrote him a title to the moon. A modern lunar king, Dennis Hope, a Nevada man, famously claimed ownership of the moon by exploiting a loophole in the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. He's the one who sells plots of land on the moon through his Lunar Embassy Corporation.
Genius. The man's a fucking genius.
Oh, yeah, he'll never have to work for the rest of his life until he runs out of plots on the moon. He probably just resells plots on the moon.
Yeah.
Just sells the same plot over and over. Well, drop your favorite moon theory below. Thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe. People are liking this content. Be one of them with a little click. Little click. Catch you later.
We love you.